wanted to cover AMD's most recent earnings call and focus on kind of getting into the details. The devil really is in the details with AMD, and it seems like the market is missing a lot of these details, which is the current alpha. Like if you're an AMD investor and you're not aware of these things, this is something that can give you a little bit more conviction. Obviously, this is not financial advice, but in their Q1 earnings, they did $7.4 billion in revenue with 50% gross margin and net income of $709 million. Now they're guiding for $7.4 billion in Q2. However, that was when the export controls put in place by the Biden administration were still in place. So it remains to be seen how that's going to impact Q2. But let's say the new executive order that Trump put in place, if that negates those payments that AMD was going to have to make, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say we're looking at closer to 8 to 8.4 billion in Q2, and that also impacts gross margin, meaning instead of going down to the low 40s due to export control payments, will probably stay between 50 and 55%. And then net income will be much higher as well. Now, one thing people are missing with the net income is that there is every quarter AMD has amortization costs related to their acquisitions over the last several years, which that includes Xilinx as well as ZT Systems. However, AMD did just close the selling of the ZT Systems manufacturing side of the business for $3 billion in cash and equity. And I think it's possible you could see some different numbers for Q2 for their net income and gross margin, because they're not going to be, since they're moving towards more of an asset light business model. That means you could see less amortization payments, if not all, and I'm not sure on that because I haven't been able to find information on that yet, but I think you could see gross margin expansion greater than people think and net income obviously higher than people think due to this most recent sale. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about, which I think is probably the biggest thing that no one is talking about AMD, is their stock buybacks, as well as how that impacts free cash flow. So AMD did about $750 million in stock buybacks in Q1, which is, you can look at stock buybacks as in several different ways. Like, it's bullish because they believe their stock is cheap, or they're just trying to use the excess cash they have to benefit shareholders. That's one positive way to look at it. A negative way would be like they don't know what to do with their excess cash, so they're just buying back stock. And some people, and honestly, you could make an argument for that. However, when you look at free cash flow, if you just get rid of that stock buyback payment, their free cash flow is actually 1.5 billion, or just under it. So what that means is their free cash flow generation was greater in Q1 than it was in Q4 2024 by almost $400 million. So that is extremely good, and I think you're going to see that number continue to explode in 2025, especially towards the back half of the year. So that's extremely good. And I think, these are just, again, some things that I feel like are really being overlooked for AMD because the stock is not popular. People really hate AMD. They call it advanced money destroyer because the stock is still down over 50% from all-time highs. At one point, it was down to $76 recently. If you're interested in AMD stock or you're already an investor, these are some things you want to start to think about. I don't think Wall Street is thinking about these things, at least the really shallow Wall Streeters. Like, they really just read headlines. They're not digging into the details. Like, the details are the qualitative as well as the quantitative. Actually, on that note, one thing that people should be thinking about is George Hotz, a month or two ago, actually bought $250,000 in AMD stock. And he did that because he's seen a cultural shift in AMD from not really going all in on software to going all in on open source software and supporting businesses like George Hotz businesses, which are trying to commoditize the pay-to-flop. So, like, again, this is just another qualitative detail that people either aren't aware of, are not looking for, or know about and don't think is important. But to me, that's an extremely important data point, because George was basically hating on AMD for the last year or two, saying that, just sell the stock until they change their culture. And he did a complete 180 and is now like all in on AMD. I think his direct quote is either AMD is overvalued or NVIDIA is either overvalued or AMD is undervalued. So hopefully this helps you if you're an AMD investor or, trying to figure out what's going on with AMD. Have a good day.